The awakening, Ethan slowly opened his eyes and felt an overwhelming sense of confusion. The world around him was a blur of strange, soft lights and unfamiliar shapes. He blinked, trying to clear the fog in his mind, but nothing made sense. He tried to move, but his body felt heavy as if he was trapped in a deep sleep. His heart began to race, and a feeling of panic crept in. Where was he? How had he gotten here? He pushed himself up from what seemed like a soft bed. The surface beneath him was smooth and cool to the touch, almost like some kind of metal. His hands trembled as he reached out, and he realized the room was unlike anything he had ever seen before. The walls glowed with an eerie, soft blue light, and strange symbols were etched into the surface. There was no window, no door. Just the dim glow and the unfamiliar silence. Ethan's head was pounding. He rubbed his temples, trying to remember anything that could explain where he was. The last thing he recalled was a blinding flash of light. A crash, then nothing. How had he ended up in this strange place? A low sound interrupted his thoughts, and his eyes snapped to the source. In the corner of the room, barely visible in the shadows, stood a figure. Ethan froze. The figure was watching him. A pair of glowing eyes stared at him from the darkness. Unblinking, unafraid. The figure moved slightly, stepping forward into the soft light. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The figure was a woman, or at least she looked like one. Her skin was a pale shade of blue, almost translucent, with faint shimmering patterns running along her arms and legs. Her hair was long silver, and flowed like liquid silk, catching the light as it moved. Her eyes were a bright shade of violet, almost glowing in the dim room. She stood still, her gaze fixed on Ethan, studying him with a kind of curiosity that made him feel uneasy. Who? Who are you? Ethan's voice sounded strange to his own ears, hoarse and weak. He tried to stand but stumbled, feeling the weight of his body pulling him down. The woman made no move to help, but she didn't seem alarmed by his struggles. Either. She tilted her head slightly, as if considering his question, before slowly walking towards him. Her steps were soft, almost silent, like she was gliding across the ground. Ethan watched her, a mix of fear and fascination racing through him. Was she human? She didn't look like anyone he had ever seen. And why was she just standing there, watching him? When she reached him, she knelt down slowly, bringing her face level with his. Ethan tensed, unsure of what to expect. Her eyes softened as she studied him. There was a calmness in her expression, but Ethan could sense the weight of something. More, something unknown. The woman seemed almost like a vision, something out of a dream. But no, she was real. He could see her clearly now, and every detail was so sharp, so perfect, it was hard to believe. Where am I? Ethan asked again, his voice steadier this time, though it still cracked with uncertainty. The woman didn't respond with words. Instead, she extended her hand toward him, the tips of her fingers glowing faintly as if charged with energy. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Was she going to hurt him? He flinched back instinctively, but she didn't make any aggressive move. Her hand hovered in front of him, a soft invitation. Still unsure, Ethan hesitated before taking her hand. The moment their skin touched, a strange warmth spread through his body. It was as though he had been plugged into something powerful, something alive. His head cleared, the fog lifting as if the very touch of her brought him back to his senses. For a brief moment, Ethan felt a connection, a link, however fleeting, between them. Her touch was gentle, yet strong, and it felt familiar, as if he had been waiting for it. She finally spoke, her voice soft but clear, with a melodic tone that seemed to echo in the back of his mind. You are safe. Do not be afraid. Ethan blinked, trying to process the words. Safe? He didn't feel safe. He felt more confused than ever. His head was still spinning, his surroundings strange and unrecognizable. Where was he? Who was she? And why had she found him? Where am I? Ethan managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked at him closely, as though trying to decide how much to reveal. Ethan noticed that her eyes held a certain sadness, a quiet weight behind them. She was more than just a stranger in this strange place. She seemed otherworldly, and yet there was something human about her gaze. Something that made him want to trust her. I don't know how I got here, Ethan continued, frustration beginning to show in his voice. I was on a ship. I crashed. I don't remember. The woman's expression softened, and she placed her hand gently on his shoulder. You were brought here, but you were not alone. There are others far away, and you have been chosen. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Chosen? What did that even mean? His mind was racing with questions, but before he could ask, the woman stood and gestured for him to follow. She moved towards a nearby wall, where a faint, swirling light appeared as she approached it. The light shifted, revealing a large doorway. Ethan blinked in surprise. How had she done that? Where was this place? His confusion grew, but he felt an undeniable pull to follow her. Come, she said again, her voice calm and steady. It is time you see the truth. Ethan's legs wobbled as he stood, and he followed her cautiously. His mind was still, a whirlwind of questions, but there was something in her presence, something comforting, that made him feel as though he could trust her. As he stepped into the light, he had no idea what lay ahead, but he knew one thing for sure. His life had just changed forever. The doors closed behind them, sealing Ethan in this strange, unknown world. The woman turned to him and spoke her voice as soothing as ever. You are not alone here, Ethan. We will find the answers together. Ethan nodded, still trying to process everything. But as the woman led him deeper into the unknown, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much larger than he could ever imagine. The first conversation Ethan followed the woman through the glowing doorway, unsure of what to expect next. The passage was narrow but seemed to stretch on forever, lit by the soft, pulsating lights that covered the walls like veins. As they walked, the sounds of the strange world outside became more distinct, a hum, a faint whisper of voices, and something that resembled distant music. It felt almost unreal, like something from a dream. They reached another room, larger and more open than the one he had woken up in. The walls here were covered with intricate patterns, each one shifting, as if alive. Ethan couldn't help but stare in awe at the strange beauty surrounding him. He had never seen anything like this in his life, not even in the most outlandish science fiction movies. The woman stopped in the center of the room and turned to face him. Her violet eyes seemed to study him with an intensity that made Ethan feel exposed, yet not uncomfortable. She was standing tall and graceful, her movements smooth like water. It was as though she didn't belong in this world, as if she was a part of something far more ancient and powerful. Ethan stood a few paces away, still trying to make sense of everything. His mind was racing. Where am I? He asked again, his voice filled with both fear and curiosity. What is this place? Who are you? And why am I here? The woman studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she sighed softly, almost as if she had been expecting these questions. Her voice was gentle, yet it carried an underlying strength. My name is Lyra, she said, her tone soft but firm. I come from a place far from here. A world you could never imagine, but one that I am now bringing you to. This is the Hall of Observation. It is a place where we, my people, observe and learn from other worlds. Ethan tried to process her words. Your people? He repeated, his mind still struggling to understand. Are you human? Lyra shook her head slowly. No, I am not human. I belong to a race of beings called the Elorians. We are ancient, older than your species could ever fathom. We have watched your world for many generations, and now Now we have brought you here. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. Elorians? He had never heard of such a race. Why me? Why bring me here? He asked, his voice shaky. What do you want from me? Lyra's gaze softened, and she took a step closer. We did not bring you here out of malice, she explained, her voice soothing. You were chosen because of the unique nature of your world. You are human, but you carry something powerful inside you. Something that can help us. Ethan frowned, not understanding. Powerful? What do you mean? I'm just a guy from Earth. I don't have any special powers. Lyra smiled, a sad smile that seemed to carry the weight of years of knowledge. You do not yet understand, she said, but you will. Your species, despite its many flaws, has something we do not. Something we need, and that is why you are here. Ethan didn't know what to make of her words. He was still confused, his head spinning with more questions than answers. He tried to focus on what she was saying, but it was difficult. Everything felt too surreal. You said I was chosen, Ethan said slowly, trying to make sense of it. Chosen for what? Lyra's eyes darkened slightly, as if a shadow had crossed her thoughts. You were chosen because of the impending danger. There's a threat approaching, a force that seeks to destroy all of us. The Elorians are not as strong as we once were. Our species is dying, and we need your help to survive. Ethan stood tall, his heart pounding. There was no going back now. He wasn't just some lost man in a strange place. He was part of something important. And maybe, just maybe, he could help save two worlds. The journey ahead would not be easy, but Ethan was ready. The first step had been taken. The fight for survival had begun. The growing threat, the next few days were a blur of constant motion. Lyra and the other Elorians worked tirelessly to prepare Ethan for what was to come. They had shown him the basics, how to move in this new world, how to survive its harsh environments, and how to harness his own human strengths. But the most difficult part of his training was yet to come. Lyra had explained that he was being prepared not just to survive, but to help the Elorians fight back against the Kivara. Ethan couldn't shake the weight of the task ahead. Every time he thought about what Lyra had told him, his heart raced. With fear, the Kivara were a terrifying force. Their power to manipulate space was unlike anything he had ever imagined. Yet, the more Ethan trained, the more he realized that maybe there was a chance for victory. Maybe, just maybe, he could help them win. Lyra had taken him into the Elorian training grounds, a vast open area surrounded by high walls of shimmering metal. The ground beneath their feet was soft, like a thick carpet of moss, yet it held a strange, almost magnetic quality to it. As Ethan followed Lyra, his mind wandered back to Earth, to the life he had once known. But there was no going back. He was here now, and he had to focus on the task at hand. Ethan, Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts, soft yet firm. You must understand the danger we face. The Kivara are ruthless. They will stop at nothing to destroy us. Ethan looked up at her, trying to read the seriousness in her eyes. He had seen that same look before when she spoke about the threat, when she mentioned the Kivara. It was a look that made his blood run cold, yet it also filled him with a sense of purpose. He had to help them. He couldn't ignore what was at stake. I understand, he said quietly. But what exactly do we do? How do we fight them? Lyra nodded, her expression unwavering. We fight by learning what they cannot understand about us. Humans have an ability to adapt quickly, to find solutions where others see none. The Kivara underestimate your species. That is their weakness. Ethan nodded slowly, absorbing her words. He wasn't sure how he was supposed to fight an enemy that could manipulate dimensions, but Lyra had faith in him. She believed in the power of humanity, and for some reason, that belief resonated with him. It gave him hope. Now, Lyra said, her voice taking on a more urgent tone, we must begin your physical training. The Kivara will not give us time to prepare. We must be ready at all costs. The training was intense. Lyra pushed him harder than he thought was possible. She taught him not just how to fight, but how to think like a warrior. She made him run, climb, and jump across obstacles that seemed impossible to overcome. At times, Ethan felt like he couldn't keep up, but every time he thought about giving up, Lyra's voice urged him to push harder. "You are stronger than you think, Ethan," she would say. "Do not let your doubts stop you." Over time, Ethan's body grew stronger. His muscles ached, but he learned to ignore the pain. He pushed his limits further than he ever thought possible. Still, he couldn't shake the fear that lingered in his mind. What if he wasn't enough? What if, despite everything, they still couldn't stop the Kivara? One evening, after a particularly grueling training session, Ethan found himself alone in a quiet corner of the complex. His body was sore, and his mind was exhausted. The sky outside was dark, and the soft glow of the Elorian city illuminated the horizon like a distant dream. He sat on a rock, staring out at the unfamiliar landscape. "You're lost in thought." Lyra's voice came from behind him. He turned to see her standing there, her eyes soft with understanding. "What troubles you?" Ethan hesitated before speaking. "I'm scared," he admitted, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. He had never been one to show weakness, but here, in this strange world, he felt different. What if I can't do this? What if we're not enough to stop them? Lyra walked over and sat beside him. Her presence was calm and comforting, and for a moment, Ethan allowed himself to relax. "Fear is natural," she said gently. "But you must remember this. Fear is not your enemy. It is what you do with it that matters." Ethan looked at her, unsure of what she meant. She continued, her voice steady and unwavering. "The Kivara have one great advantage: they instill fear in those they encounter. They thrive on it. But humans, Ethan, humans do not give in to fear easily. It is in your nature to stand up, to fight, to survive. That is why you are here." Her words filled him with a sense of clarity. For the first time since he had arrived, he began to understand what she meant. It wasn't about being fearless. It was about standing tall in the face of fear and pushing forward despite it. Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. "I'm ready," he said quietly. "I won't let fear stop me." Lyra smiled, a rare warmth in her expression. "Good, because the time for training is almost over. The Kivara are close. We can feel them approaching. It is time to put everything you've learned to the test." The weight of her words hit Ethan like a physical blow. The Kivara were coming. The fight was no longer something far in the future. It was here now. There was no more time for hesitation. Ethan stood up, his resolve hardening. "I'm ready," he said again, louder this time. "Let's do this." Lyra stood beside him, her eyes glowing with a sense of pride. "Together, we will face whatever comes. Together, we will fight." As the days passed, the tension in the air grew thicker. The Elorians were preparing for the battle that was coming, and Ethan knew he had to be ready. He trained harder, pushing his body and mind to their limits. He couldn't afford to be weak now. Lyra believed in him, and he would not let her, or the Elorians down out the final choice. The days leading up to the Kivara's arrival felt like a constant weight pressing down on Ethan's chest. The Elorians were preparing, but there was a palpable sense of urgency, an edge to everything. The city, which had once seemed peaceful and full of life, now felt like a ticking clock. Every corner of it was filled with activity, and the air buzzed with the quiet hum of preparation. Ethan's training had reached its peak. He was faster, stronger, and more agile than he had ever been before, but he still felt a nagging doubt. Despite all the training, despite the encouragement from Lyra and the other Elorians, a part of him wasn't sure if he was ready. Could he really be the one to help defeat the Kivara? He stood outside, the cool wind blowing through the strange trees that lined the Elorian city. The sky was dim, lit only by the soft glow of the twin moons that hung overhead. It was beautiful, but Ethan couldn't bring himself to enjoy it. His mind kept drifting to the Kivara, to the destruction they were capable of, and to the uncertainty of what would happen when they arrived. Ethan. Lyra's voice pulled him from his thoughts. He turned to see her walking toward him, her steps as graceful as ever. She seemed calm, but Ethan could see the concern in her eyes. She had always been the steady one, the one with the plan, the one who believed in him. But now she was looking at him differently. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about everything. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice soft but carrying an undeniable weight. Ethan swallowed, the question hanging in the air like a heavy cloud. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice rough. "I'm not sure I can do this." Lyra stopped in front of him, her eyes locking with his. "You have more strength than you realize," she said gently. "But the time for hesitation is over. The Kivara are almost here. We must act now." He could hear the urgency in her voice. The same sense of fear that had taken root in him seemed to be there in her too, hidden beneath her calm exterior. The Kivara weren't just an enemy. They were a force of nature, an unstoppable tide that threatened everything. Lyra had told him time and again that they needed his adaptability, his strength as a human. But now, in the face of everything, Ethan wasn't sure he could live up to that. "What if I fail?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if everything we've done, everything we've fought for, what if it's not enough?" Lyra placed her hand on his shoulder, her touch firm but comforting. "Failure is a part of this. It always has been. But we fight, not because we are sure of victory, but because we must. If we do not, then we have already lost." Ethan looked at her, her words sinking into his mind. He didn't know if he could defeat the Kivara, but he knew that he had to try. For Lyra, for the Elorians, for Earth. He couldn't let fear decide his fate. "I'm with you," he said finally, his voice steady. "I'm ready." Lyra smiled, a glimmer of relief passing through her eyes. "Good," she said, her voice softening. "Then let us prepare." The hours that followed were a blur. The Elorians had gathered in the heart of their city, preparing for the final stand against the Kivara. Ethan had been given armor, a lightweight, flexible material that allowed him to move freely but still offered protection against the Kivara's attacks. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. Lyra had led into the front lines, where the other Elorians stood, ready for battle. They were a small group, but they had been training for years. Ethan could see the determination in their eyes. They were scared, but they were not backing down. And neither would he. The sky darkened as the Kivara approached. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble, and a strange, ominous sound filled the air. Ethan looked up to see the rift in the sky, a swirling vortex of energy that seemed to rip apart reality itself. From within it, he saw the Kivara ship's massive black structures that seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. "They were here. Get ready." Lyra's voice was sharp, commanding. "We do not have much time." Ethan's heart raced as he took his place alongside the Elorians. His hand tightened around the weapon they had given him, a sleek, energy-based rifle. It was the most advanced technology he had ever seen, but it felt foreign in his hands. He wasn't a soldier. He was just a man who had been thrown into an impossible situation. But he had no choice now. The Kivara were here. There was no running. There was only fighting. The first of the Kivara soldiers emerged from the rift. They were tall, their skin dark and smooth, their eyes glowing with a menacing red light. They moved with deadly precision, their weapons aimed at the Elorians. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. They looked like machines, each one a perfect killing machine designed for one purpose: destruction. Lyra raised her weapon, her face hard with resolve. "This is it," she said, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. "We fight now." The battle erupted in an instant. Energy blasts filled the air, and the ground shook as the Kivara advanced. Ethan fired his weapon, the energy blasts flying from his rifle and striking the Kivara soldiers. They seemed to shrug off the shots as if they were nothing, their dark armor absorbing the blasts without flinching. Ethan gritted his teeth. This wasn't enough. He couldn't stop them with just this weapon. He had to do more. He turned to Lyra, who was moving with incredible speed, taking down Kivara soldiers with precision. She was a force to be reckoned with, and Ethan knew he had to match her energy if they were going to stand a chance. With a deep breath, Ethan ran toward the front lines, dodging energy blasts and leaping over obstacles. His training had prepared him for this moment. His body moved almost instinctively, the strength and speed he had developed during his training now coming to his aid. He reached the Kivara soldiers and fired, his shots hitting their weak points. The soldiers staggered, their movements faltering. For a brief moment, it was enough. Ethan kept firing, each shot landing with deadly accuracy. But the Kivara kept coming. There were too many of them. Suddenly, he felt a shift in the air. A Kivara soldier, larger and more menacing than the others, stepped forward. This one was different. Its armor was more advanced, its eyes burning with a bright red light. It raised its hand, and Ethan felt the air around him grow thick, heavy, as if time itself had slowed down. The Kivara soldier spoke, its voice like 1,000 voices speaking at once. "You cannot stop us. You are nothing." Ethan stood his ground, refusing to show fear. "We'll see about that." With one final surge of energy, he fired everything he had. The blast hit the Kivara soldier square in the chest, and for a moment, there was silence. Then, with a mighty crash, the Kivara soldier fell, its massive form crashing to the ground. The remaining soldiers hesitated, uncertainty creeping into their ranks. Lyra stood beside him, her face grim but proud. "This is just the beginning," she said quietly. "The battle is far from over, but we have won this round." Ethan nodded, his heart still racing. The fight wasn't over. But for the first time, he felt like they had a chance.